They should be booted out of government. And the question now that arises is, how much more of this can the British people take? I don't think they're going to take a lot, Jeremy.
It's coming into power. I mean, this guy is quickly becoming one of the most unpopular prime ministers that we've had in a long time.
See, the nation has buyer's remorse. The latest polls show that Labour are down to 30%. The Tories, who don't even have a leader or any policies at the moment, are on 26%. And Sir Keir Starmer wants to scare people into staying silent about it. I don't think he'll win that fight.
Will the Labour Party ever win an election again? They are falling apart faster than Starmer can say £22 billion black hole. Well, according to the latest polls, it sure looks like it. With approval ratings taking a nosedive, Labour is now scrambling to stop the bleeding, but the public seems pretty fed up with the endless U-turns, broken promises, and of course the controversial policies that don't seem to be making anyone's life easier. They're on their moral high horse and the fall's coming soon. Leading them, Starmer will be the one who'll crash them into the ground. At least, that's what it seems based on the polls and public response.
I was very disappointed with Keir Starmer's speech, as I think a lot of people were. We should also just note, this isn't my opinion, in the leadership ratings in all of our national polls, he's down by about 30 points since coming into power. I mean, this guy is quickly becoming one of the most unpopular prime ministers that we've had in a long time. In fact, as I'm talking to you, only a couple of hours ago, we had a new poll out this evening showing that compared to when Labour won the election at the beginning of July, Keir Starmer's ratings are down 36 points.
The worst prime minister in British history is quite the achievement. Let's cut right to the chase. Keir Starmer's Labour Party is watching its support disappear faster than a tray of free donuts at a civil service meeting. Recent polling has shown Labour dropping massively in popularity across the board. But why? It seems the honeymoon period is officially over, and the British public isn't buying what Starmer's selling. According to one poll, Labour's lead has shrunk by 10 points in a matter of weeks. Now, I'm no mathematician, but that's not exactly a good trend if you're hoping to lead the country.
Welcome along. Sir Keir Starmer is tanking, and so is the Labour Party. The nation has buyer's remorse. The latest polls show that Labour are down to 30%. The Tories, who don't even have a leader or any policies at the moment, are on 26%, and Reform are now at 19%, their joint highest rating ever. That means that in the last few weeks, Labour has already lost the equivalent of 65 seats in Parliament. Keir Starmer's personal approval ratings are in free fall. 44% of people are dissatisfied with him. That's his worst ever rating.
Labour's losing the majority vote, one horrible policy at a time. You may be wondering, why the sudden plunge? Well, Labour's policies, or rather, the lack of coherent ones, might have something to do with it. Voters were promised a new direction, bold reforms, and most importantly, change they could believe in. What they got instead was a rehash of old Labour mixed with just enough fence sitting to make centrists and left-wingers equally uncomfortable. It's all a mixture of broken promises and U-turns, something the Labour Party is a champion of.
And then there's the Keir Starmer, who made a series of promises when he stood to be leader of the Labour Party, or pledges as he called them, and not only broke them, but in some cases claimed he'd never made them.
Is it a pledge that these industries will be in your manifesto for nationalisation?
Yes, it is. I didn't make a commitment to nationalisation. I never made a commitment to nationalisation.
Some of those lies were just petty.
I want to pay tribute to Jeremy Corbyn. He's a colleague, he's a friend.
Was he a friend?
No.
The fact is, you just cannot trust a single word that man says.
And you can't, can you? He either U-turns on everything, or you could say he just lies to you.
If we had to name the biggest issue dragging Starmer down, it would probably be his party's inability to stick to a decision. It's like Labour has turned into a real-life soap opera, complete with dramatic U-turns, broken promises, and the occasional plot twist no one saw coming. The public can barely keep up. Take the issue of the two-child benefit cap, for instance. It's causing the Labour Party to devolve into a civil war. His own MPs are bashing him in the Parliament. It's not just disagreement, they're utterly humiliating him in front of the entire country.
If the Labour Party has a moral mission, it must be to eradicate poverty. The key driver of rising child poverty is the two-child benefit cap. And the single most effective way of tackling child poverty is immediately lifting 300,000 children out of poverty by scrapping this cruel policy.
Labour MPs have been at odds over it, with Starmer refusing to scrap the cap, despite his party's usual stance against such measures. Is it funny or more tragic, depending on how you look at it, that some of his MPs are calling him out on it? Starmer is stuck between a rock and a hard place. I mean, who needs political opponents when your own team is doing such a great job of undermining you? Well, Starmer's on his high horse, punishing MPs for speaking against him.
There is a significant whipping operation underway, and people are feeling, Labour MPs who are unhappy are really feeling the strength of that whipping operation. Many of them feel if they were to vote against the government, they would be stripped of the whip. And I was in Parliament this afternoon and I saw one Labour MP literally begging another Labour MP not to even abstain, because they said, if you abstain, you still might lose the whip.
It's becoming painfully clear that Starmer doesn't quite know how to handle internal rebellion. Just look at how he suspended 7 MPs for daring to speak their minds. Tough on dissent within Labour, but soft on crime. What an ironic leadership style. This is ultimately damaging the Labour Party, as they're not even on the same page anymore. MPs are either scared or boiling with hatred for Starmer. At any rate, Labour's losing in the long run. Who'd want to support a party this divided? Speaking of division, there's one thing Labour has done really well: uniting people against themselves. The biggest contributor to this hatred are Labour's lies surrounding taxes.
There is a budget coming in October, and it's going to be painful. We have no other choice, given the situation that we're in. Those with the broadest shoulders should bear the heavier burden. I'll have to turn to the country and make big asks of you as well, to accept short-term pain for long-term good. The difficult trade-off for the genuine solution.
If Labour's recent performance in the polls is a disaster, then Starmer's economic policies are the gasoline fueling that fire. Raising taxes, especially during an economic downturn, has never been a vote winner, and guess what? It still isn't. The British public is not exactly thrilled about Labour's plans for taxation, particularly when many feel like they're already being taxed into oblivion. Even if you were to believe his sob story, here's what he promised all of us before the elections.
So let me spell it out. We will not raise income tax. We will not raise national insurance. We will not raise VAT. That is a manifesto commitment.
Really? Are you okay with this hypocrisy? A leader who says one thing before the elections and does the exact opposite is no leader at all. Labour supports these tax rises and now they're losing all support. Is this a surprise to anyone? Turns out, if you try to break the backs of working class people just because they have broad shoulders, people don't appreciate that much. Instead, they're now going to break Labour's majority. Assuming that Labour doesn't implode before that, and let's not even get started on the pensioners. Right now they're trying to damage control by blaming it on the previous government.
The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, is saying, which is essentially that he knows it's really unpopular, he hates it, but he feels that he has no other choice because of that alleged £22 billion black hole left by the Conservatives. So slightly different lines there from Keir Starmer and Wes Streeting, and a possibility for Keir Starmer tomorrow of a rebellion from his backbench. This might be the biggest challenge we've seen Keir Starmer face in his leadership so far.
You know it's bad when pensioners, yes, the very people who have been paying taxes longer than most of us have been alive, are protesting Labour's policies. Starmer keeps insisting that his tax hikes are necessary to rebuild Britain, but most voters seem to think he's just building a bigger black hole for their hard-earned cash. Businesses are starting to feel the squeeze. Entrepreneurs are clutching their wallets, bracing themselves for the next economic grenade Starmer throws their way.
With their bills, and the Prime Minister just keeps saying he lives in a different world. That
Could you?
the corner's turned and it's all
if people
right.
are struggling with their bills, why do you want to make it harder for them by saddling them with £2,000 worth of higher taxes? How is that going to make Paula or anyone's life easier?
And that's the crux of it. Starmer's Labour can't seem to decide if they want to be the party of the working class, the middle class, or no class at all. He keeps claiming to be a champion of the common folk, but why does he keep increasing our taxes? You think it'd be easy to side with the people who elected them, but Labour's intent on supporting criminals instead. They're actively trying to release violent criminals early from prison, and the people hate it. Surprise, surprise, the Labour Party just lost all support. The Conservatives are having a field day bashing the Labour Party over it.
And in contrast to the last Labour scheme, prisoners were let out with no supervision, no electronic tags. In fact, 80,000 offenders were let out. 16,000 were violent, Mr. Speaker, leading to multiple murders committed. We fixed that system. But when it comes to this question, not only are we building the biggest prison programme in history, we're also deploying rapid deployment cells. And, Mr. Speaker, because on this side of the House, we understand the importance of prison. Unlike one of his frontbenchers who said, and I said, who quote, "Prison doesn't prevent crime."
Literally everyone has been criticising Starmer and his Labour Party on their approach to crime, or, more accurately, their non-approach. Crime is on the rise, yet Starmer seems more focused on appeasing the liberal elite than actually doing something about it. Riots, knife crime, and a general feeling of insecurity have left the public questioning whether Labour even has a clue about how to handle the issue. Or maybe that's what they want. They seem to love criminals enough to release them early from jail.
Unbelievable, optics are awful, but at the same time, we are sat watching thugs and criminals covered in tattoos, in Gucci trainers, getting let out of prison early to allow more space, getting into expensive cars when they're being doused with champagne and driving off into the distance saying, "Thank you, Kier," or "I'll be back." I'm very, you laugh, I'm proud to be British. I'm really getting embarrassed, Ben. Embarrassed to be British.
Under Starmer's watch, Labour's crime policies have been all over the place. They've focused more on social justice rhetoric than actual justice for victims. They've gone ahead and released prisoners early who end up reoffending in worse ways. It's great to want a fair society, where criminals are rehabilitated, but how about making sure people feel safe walking down the street first?
But over half of the prison population in this country, many of whom will be released early, are therefore violent or sexual crimes. None of those people politically can be allowed out extra early, because what is going to happen, and it will happen, is that people will reoffend violently.
Labour's approach to policing seems to involve lots of talk and very little action. They are indifferent to rising crime rates, and voters are left scratching their heads or cowering in fear. And to make matters worse, Labour MPs who speak out against his soft-on-crime approach are the ones getting punished. So, he's tough on dissenters in his own party, but when it comes to actual criminals, well, that's a different story.
He thinks that he's gone in strong by, cracking down on the rioters. He's got to follow through now with cracking down on his staff to maintain power, because, let's be honest, there are lots of people in the Labour Party that would like to be leader other than Starmer, and that rebellion will come soon enough, and this is why he's taking such a hard line now.
I think
Labour lied, and now their own people are turning against them. Isn't it insane that he's tougher on free speech than crime? And let's not forget that this is the same Starmer who campaigned on being tough on crime. Now, with Labour voters facing increased crime rates in their communities, all they've gotten from Starmer is silence. If only he could apply the same decisive action to actual criminals, Labour might not be in this mess. No wonder the public's faith in Labour is evaporating. They need action on crime, not more empty promises.
So yesterday was the worst day in the Channel since Sir Keir Starmer took over. 703 illegal migrants in 11 boats. Before the election, we were told about smashing the gangs and about a new border command, or whatever they're calling it. We are yet to hear anything about those things since, aren't we? There have been protests, riots. There are millions of people who are angry, and immigration is now the top issue facing the country for most people, according to the latest YouGov polling.
Ah, yes, immigration. Another hot-button issue that's making Starmer sweat like a politician caught in a lie. Let's not forget, he did lie. Labour promised to smash the gangs and deal with the rising illegal immigration rates, but did nothing after the election. Immigration has always been a tricky issue for Labour, and under Starmer, they've somehow managed to make it even more complicated.
Speaker, the honourable gentleman has been on the wrong side of this issue his entire career. He described all immigration law as racist. He said it was a mistake to control immigration. And he has never, ever voted for tougher asylum laws. It is clear, Mr. Speaker, while he's in hock to the open border activists, we're on the side of the British people.
Actually, the Labour Party as a whole has been on the wrong side of the issue forever. Starmer has tried to walk a fine line, attempting to appease both pro-immigration activists and voters who want stricter border controls. The result? He's managed to please no one. A friend to all is a friend to none. Pro-immigration advocates feel betrayed by his reluctance to commit to more open borders, while those concerned about immigration believe Starmer is too soft and out of touch with the challenges mass immigration brings. So, it's a double whammy. Labour's losing support from both sides, and the polls don't lie about this.
Monologue there, Jeremy. You said people voted in their millions more for Labour, but actually they didn't. 500,000 people less voted for Kier Starmer than voted for Jeremy Corbyn back in December 19. That's the madness of our electoral system. But yes, the news that some 50% of Labour MPs received donations from unions during the election process. I mean, if that had been donating to Reform or donating to the Tories, the Labour Party would have squealed from the rooftops.
If you're wondering what happened to all the people who supported Labout, the truth is, there weren't many to begin with. At the height of Starmer's popularity, only 20% of the people voted for Labour. But those days are long gone, and the polls reflect the brutal reality people are not impressed. In fact, recent data shows that Starmer's approval rating has plummeted to an all-time low. Now, polls can sometimes be deceiving, but when multiple surveys start showing the same downward trend, well, it's hard to argue against reality.
He has plunged a long way in a very short space of time, and as I was discussing with Isabel Oakeshott earlier, it's almost as if he's trying to alienate vast swathes of the public. Smokers, drivers, motorists, people who like free speech, people who like freedom.
And this is what happened to the people who did vote for him. Labour's out-of-touch policies have alienated their own voters. Some might say Starmer's leadership style just isn't resonating with voters. He comes across as indecisive, overly cautious, and frankly a bit out of touch with the concerns of ordinary Brits. It's no wonder people are jumping ship. After all, why vote for a party that's in the pockets of the unions?
More than half of Brits have a very different view to others. Believe the UK is heading in the wrong direction under Labour, according to this polling, in a sign that the new government's honeymoon period is coming to an end, if it even began. The Ipsos survey found the Prime Minister's net rating has slumped from 7 immediately after the election to 0. It comes as Labour is accused of being under the thumb of its trade union paymasters, with concerns over donations to MPs and strike deals.
At the core of Labour's poll struggles is a question of corruption. Kier Starmer was supposed to be the steady hand guiding the party back to electability. Instead, he's pandering to the unions. Whether it's scrapping policies like the winter fuel allowance seriously, who thought that was a good idea, or dodging tough questions on crime and immigration, Starmer has shown himself to be more of a follower than a leader.
Settled in this country, Starmer has taken the United Kingdom to its knees within 9 weeks of being in government. And everything he does attests to the fact that the Labour Party, and him particularly as Prime Minister, should be nowhere near their respective offices. They should be booted out of government. And the question now that arises is, how much more of this can the British people take? I don't think they're going to take a lot, Jeremy.
At this point, it's safe to say that Kier Starmer's honeymoon phase is well and truly over. Labour's dramatic fall in the polls is a direct result of broken promises, indecision, and a complete inability to connect with voters. Whether it's the economy, crime, or internal party rebellion, the Labour Party is being called into question from every direction. And while the British public watches the Labour Party implode in slow motion, it's hard not to laugh at the absurdity of it all. Who knew that a party with such high hopes could fall so far, so fast? We're all tired of this hellish train wreck of a government. The least we can do is call them out on it. You can join us in this quest for accountability by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Because with the way things are going, there's bound to be even more Labour blunders on the horizon.